Hello everyone and welcome to my booktube channel. My name is Sarah and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of April. So far in 2016 I have only been reading a maximum of 7 books in a month, and that was true yet again this month. I am happy with the books that I read because I didn't dislike any of them, so let's just jump straight in. The first book that I read this month was The Great American Whatever by Tim... I don't know how to pronounce his name, and I feel like if I try, I'm just gonna butcher it, so Tim, this guy right here. This book is about a writer by the name of Quinn Roberts, who is 16 and struggling with a recent death in his family. The main character is a screenwriter, and so we get to see some different scenes told from his perspective that are sort of written as if they were a screenplay, and I just thought that was so cool. You get to see that in Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, but I've never seen that in a YA book besides those two books, so I thought it was a really interesting way to format things. The thing about this book is it was equal parts hilarious and so incredibly sad. I was either laughing or crying or doing both on the same page because it was honestly just the best. The main character is hilarious and he has such an interesting perspective on things. He has a very dry, sarcastic sense of humor, and I absolutely love that. I don't read enough funny books, and so it was really refreshing. But amidst all of that hilarity is this darker theme. I loved this book. I thought it was so charming and funny and also incredibly important. It deals with a lot of important topics and it is just a must-read. The next book that I read this month was Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. I feel like if I gave you a synopsis for this book that it would be a major spoiler because the whole thing is spoilery. It's a modern classic. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest you do. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It is important and harrowing, and I think that everyone should read it. The third book I read this month was When We Collided by Emery Lord. And right now, I'm going to shout out to this author for being lovely and wonderful and hilarious. If you don't follow her on Twitter, you're doing yourself a disservice because she's amazing and wonderful and you should be doing that right now. Go. I will link it down below. I'm serious. She's hilarious and wonderful and wise. You should be following her. When We Collided is told from the perspective of 2 young people. The first main character is a girl named Vivi who moves to this really small beach town in California in search of a sort of new life, and that is where she meets the second main character, Jonah, who is obsessed with cooking and has an enormous family, and it is a love story between the two, but it is a lot more than that. It portrays mental illness very respectfully, and it has sweet moments and funny moments and very sad moments, but it deals with all of these things with grace. Emery Lord's writing style is just, it's so good. I love it so much. When We Collided is actually her newest release, but I became obsessed with this author, and so I went on to read one of her other books, and that is the 4th book I read this month, which is Open Road Summer by Emery Lord. This book is basically about a country music star's best friend and a summer where they go on tour together. Her name is Reagan, and she's short and brunette and feisty, and I loved her because she reminded me a lot of me. She had green eyes. Her physical description I think is the closest to me that I've ever found in a book before, and so she just had my heart from the very beginning. This book basically follows her adventures on this summer tour, and it is about loss and love and struggling to come to terms with some of the things that have happened in her past, and it was just so wonderful. If you're looking for a cutesy romance, you can find it here. If you're looking for a more emotional story, you can find it here. Emery Lord does both with such elegance, and I love it. I love her so much.
I think she has one more book, and I need to read it, like, as soon as possible, please.
The 5th book I read this month is a little bit more out of my comfort zone. I actually really don't read science fiction very often. As in, like, I think the only actual science fiction novel I've ever read is Ender's Game. Oh no, there was that Star Wars book. Okay, so a Star Wars novel, if that counts as sci-fi, right? So I've read like 2 science fiction novels in my entire life, and I'll be honest with you, the Star Wars one blew my mind, love it. Ender's Game made me feel a lot of things, but the science fiction element wasn't particularly mind-blowing. but someone I know really loves this author, and so I thought I would pick up one of her books and give it a try, and that book was The Body Electric by Beth Revis. The plot of this book is kind of hard to explain, but I would just say that it mixes elements of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with elements of Inception. Those are movies, but if you get the vibes, you know what I'm saying. I don't think I've actually talked about this before on my channel, but Inception is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love it. I've seen it like too many times to count. Like, I don't even know how many times I've watched it. To this day, if I hear the soundtrack, it'll make me cry. This book reminded me a lot of Inception, and I loved it for that reason. I give it 4 out of 5 stars because there were some things that I didn't love. I just thought some of the characters felt a little bit flat for me, but besides that, the plot was very interesting and fast-paced, and I absolutely loved the Inception aspects. You kind of have to read it to understand what I'm saying, but it's good. It deals with like dreamscapes, and if that is interesting at all to you, I highly suggest it. The next book that I read this month was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Now I know what you guys are thinking. Sarah, how could you have not read this book yet? And yes, I know. I was holding off because I was worried that the atmosphere wouldn't be as atmospheric as I'm used to, and it just wouldn't live up to the hype. But let me just tell you, that's not true at all. It was a wonderful book. I absolutely loved it. The writing style is lyrical and perfection, and the characters are so quirky. I loved each and every one of them. But there were some things in this book that took me by surprise in the best kind of way, and I need the second book in my life right now. And the final book that I read this month, book number 7, was The Boy He Striped Pajamas by John Boyne. This book was very interesting and different than I thought it would be. I tried to look for a synopsis because I had seen that there was a movie and I knew that it was set during World War II, but besides that I didn't really know what it was about. And I picked it up and it has a very middle grade feel. And the writing style is that way because it's told from the perspective of a 9-year-old boy. If you go into the book with a context, knowing sort of the time period and what was going on during that time, then you'll know what's happening, because the thing about the main character is he's very ignorant of it because he's 9 years old. It was a very emotional story for me to read just in general. And then I got to the end of the book, and I have to say the last paragraph, specifically the last line, absolutely crushed me. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I did really love it. It was one of those books that you love, but it's also really hard to read. So those are all the books that I read in the month of April. You guys should let me know down below some of the favorite books that you read this month. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you're new here. I make videos twice a week, and they are always so much fun. Whee! If you guys would like to follow me on Twitter or any of my social medias, I will leave the links to those in the description box below as always. But most of all, I hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Goodbye!